wanting to play with both of these gentlemen from a very early age. I'm talking about like 12 years old, 10 and 12 years old, having the records, wanting to play with them, staring at Ray Brown's hand coming off the string with the finger out like this as it came in, and listening to the record while I'm staring at that picture, imagining how the finger comes around the string, and I think all of us as young students have that image in mind of a certain record or a photo that goes with a certain tune off an album cover. So I wanted to know about his intensity on the instrument, and it jumped off the record at me, and I wanted to match the intensity that he had. So when I would play along to the records, I would play with Ray Brown's quarter note on that record and feel that surge of intensity from that. And I really tapped into it. I don't know. A lot of people maybe didn't get it, but for some reason that just jumped off the LP and grabbed me right by the throat. And that's what I got to do. I got to play with that. Oscar, same thing. Oscar's intensity on his instrument, 100% every note. Mean every note you play. Sing every note you play. You hear Oscar, a lot of times on the record he's singing his lines and raising ho ho ho, when he's playing the bass, and ho, all right, and he's like cheerleading, And I think bringing that intensity to the music was something that they both had in common, and they would challenge each other with the intensity. So you had to be ready for that if you're going to be in the drum chair. First time I played with them, July 7th, 1990 at the Hollywood Bowl. We're in Tuxes, and we played a ballad like early in the set. Might have started with it or something like a walking ballad. And that's going with Oscar and Ray's ho, ho. And I'm playing the brushes going, and I'm looking at myself going, man, this is a ballad. We got a whole show to go through here. I was sweating through my tuxedo. The hair was plastered to the head, and I just had to laugh and thought, that's an intense ballad, man. When you got to match that intensity of these two guys on the bandstand, I'd never experienced that before. And any of the big bands I'd played in, Tommy Dorsey Band, Lionel Hampton, Woody Herman, Count Basie Orchestra, I'd never experienced that kind of intensity, beat to beat to beat, from three guys on a bandstand. So that was the main thing, and show up every night and bring it every night, or else there are 100 guys behind you that we can call if you don't want to do this. And so that was never a problem for me. I always showed up because I wanted to be on the stage with those guys. I set my goals of who I wanted to play with: Oscar Peterson, Ray Brown, Woody Herman, and Count Basie. And you do your homework, and first of all, you got to know how to get there, and that's by knowing every piece of music that artist ever played. And then when you get there, you got to know how to keep the gig. And that is to show up every night with 110% and match the intensity of everybody in the band. So that's the most important thing I learned from both of those gentlemen. A lot of business sense too. They were both very smart businessmen, and I learned not to feel sorry for the struggling jazz musician who didn't take time to get his business together, because I was surrounded by these guys who demanded that you have your business together, or they didn't want to be associated with you. So, and I was eager to learn. So I watched how they dealt with airline counters and hotel check-ins and managers and agents and concert promoters and stage managers, and you just kind of watch, see how they work in those situations, and I'd take notes of what I thought I should do to emulate that, and what I thought maybe I could do a different way. So learning business from them was really crucial too. I don't really feel like a torchbearer. It's kind of in keeping with the last question, which is I'm just playing the music I love to play, and I'm seeking out people that I love to play with. And if people have questions about these people that I play with, I'll be happy to sit down and share a lot of the information with them if I think that they're earning this information, because this is really personal information that can bring tears to your eyes of me, seeing Mel Lewis in the hospice the day before he passed. And I don't want to share that with everybody. That's a private moment to me, but I'll share it with people who I think are going to benefit from that and continue on to play this music the way Mel saw it fit, you know, in this industry to play the music, and it meant a lot to him. So again, I think I'm a torchbearer in the eyes of the people who think I'm a torchbearer, but I don't consider myself a torchbearer. I'm you know, the last male in my family line. So, you know, a lot of people consider me that. And I'm just going, well, I just happen to be the last one and the youngest guy in the family. So you do share your experiences with people, but I don't take on the label of that as a serious torchbearer, you know. But thank you. And I do know that that a lot of people didn't get to sit down across from a dinner table with these guys and hear the stories and talk to them about it, and I'll share some of those stories. You know, it's not like, hey, let me tell you the latest Oscar Peterson joke. Hey, you know, it's not like that, but it's for the people who I think really can benefit from it and need it. I'll be happy to sit down. I'm doing it a lot. First of all, the genre in itself has gone through a lot of name changing. To my generation in the 70s, if you said traditional jazz, that meant a straw hat and a banjo and Dixieland, bad Dixieland. Mainstream jazz, it was called for a while. The jazz word, the four-letter word, is such a wide file that now you can drop so many kinds of music into that I think we're not clear on what jazz really is. Jazz, essentially, I think, boils down to some kind of improvisation going on and feeling jazzed. You know, originally in Jelly Roll Morton playing the whorehouse piano, and the guys felt jazzed in the bordello. You know, getting that feeling of, man, I'm excited. This music is great. I'm happy. So I think that element is still needed to be considered jazz music. I try not to get into too much of this because as a musician, when that bug bites you, you don't have a choice. You just have to play the music. So everything that goes on around you is going to go on, whether you like it or not. But the fact that you have an opportunity to get to play this music that you love is really all that matters. And you kind of leave all the labeling and where the future is going to everybody else who has time to think about it, because quite frankly, I don't have time to think about it. I'm putting together a new CD right now. The Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra is a priority. My trio is a priority. And I really don't have time to sit around and think about what the state of jazz is. I can tell you that it's always been 2% or less of record sales or music consumption, fans. All of that is less than 2% of the music business. And it's going to remain 2% or less. We're going to be at the bottom of the graph going along through eternity, because the people who choose to listen to jazz are affected by what it does to them emotionally. So and a lot of jazz listeners don't hear what jazz has to offer until they're in mid-30s sometimes. Then they understand what it does to them. There's a music that gets to them. But until that time, we've gone along with our friends and we listen to the same radio stations, and we go to the same websites to listen to the YouTube from somebody that's, this has got 1 million views, so why haven't you heard it yet? So it's that peer pressure of listening to what our friends listen to. And I never did that. I preferred listening to my parents' big band records, and that was my introduction into jazz. So I got the introduction really early and through private drum lessons. You know, so when Elvis came out, and I'm not taking anything away from his drummer, but I'm just talking about the music of that day that knocked the big band music off the radio stations. Papa Joe Jones to me was much more interesting as a drummer to listen to than any of the top 40 music that was being played in the day. And it was good music. It was Bill Haley and the Comets, and Jerry Lee Lewis, and it was good music, good drumming. I preferred to play Count Basie style of drumming, and Benny Goodman and Woody Herman. That drumming fascinated me, and I think you had more of a voice. You could say more than you could on a top 40 record. A lot of top 40 records, you're assigned to a role, ROLE, and that's what you're supposed to do. In jazz, they're asking you to stretch out and, man, get the lead out. Let's go. Come on, man. Say what you got to say. So once you've been bitten by that bug, you don't have a choice. You have to play that music, and you get to play the music. You realize how fortunate you are every night to sit down at the instrument and get to play. I feel for the festivals and for the clubs, because they've got to figure out a way to put butts in the seats, and in turn they're turning to the musicians and saying, did you send out emails? Did you get, well, do I have to do everything? I paid for the recording session, the CD is out, I'm doing PR work on it, and now I have to tell people in your city that I'm appearing in your city. How much time do you think I have to do all this? So, I think the responsibility is also up to the clubs and the venues and the concert sites to say, here's what's going on, and you need to come to this. So I don't think it can all be put on the musician and the networking of the musician. So it is a dilemma, because we're seeing attendance down, especially with the economy now, and people don't have that extra money to go out and hear the music. But are they buying a new HD TV? Are they buying, downloading iTunes? Are they, they're what money they have, they're making a priority for where their money is going. So, maybe we have to wait for them to come around in their mid-30s to go and hear the band. I think jazz education is helping build a jazz audience, because not everybody in jazz education is going to be a jazz legend. They may not make their living playing jazz, but they're going to know what the music is about. So they are going to come and hear you play, perhaps. But, I just think we're going to be 2% or less down at the bottom of the graph for eternity. And there'll always be somebody that wants to come and hear you do what you do. That's my hope. And so far, that's been the case. One thought about the state of jazz that we were talking about. I think one of the dilemmas that we have in the business is that the big band era identified with certain players. Lester Young, Dickie Wells, Papa Joe Jones, Duke Ellington. The swinging big band era. Then bebop came in with Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and Ray Brown, and they were identifiable to that genre that opened up again. And then West Coast jazz and the cool school and all their Lee Konitz and all these people who came from that, Miles Davis, birth of the cool. And really, I feel like this generation of players doesn't have an identity of a type of music. And I don't think there has been since fusion. And a lot of the fusion players have turned their back on fusion and now are playing George Gershwin and Cole Porter that they put down in the 70s because that was old music. But we're seeing the longevity of great material that lasts like classical music lasts. I mean, the longevity of this material, people keep going to that to find out, as Ray Brown would say, put a new dress on this tune and make it their own. And I think that's one of the things that promoters are having trouble saying, this isn't the face of this genre of music that we just started. Esperanza Spalding is writing her own tunes, but it's still in the jazz idiom of her favorite players, And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think she's a torchbearer, if you will, of keeping the vocal and the jazz element of what she's doing, because people have said she's a torchbearer. She's a new artist, so now she's going to be a torchbearer. Whether she wants to have the same answer I did about being a torchbearer or not, people will look at her as continuing on this music from her favorite, Joe Lovano, who she, so graciously and rightfully so paid tribute to in the acceptance. So I think that's one of the dilemmas for the promoters and the festivals, is that they don't have Louis Armstrong, they don't have Benny Goodman, the king of swing, from that generation of the music that they started. But they have Gerald Clayton, who's, in his 20s and has a lot to say musically, and can you get with us? This is what we're asking you to do. So I understand the dilemma of, we don't have Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie with groundbreaking music. That a lot of people turned their back on it first. Louis Armstrong hated it. A lot of the swing era guys hated bebop, and it sort of had to grow up into its movement, and then it was like, okay, we're embracing this. Now everybody wants to be Charlie Parker. I think it's from tapping into the history of it. I think we have to listen to Jimmy Lunsford's band. We've got to listen to Chick Webb. Then we can arrive at our own style of music. This is why Gerald is possibly the next big jazz star, because he's been smart enough to go back and listen to Art Tatum. He sat down at a piano with Monty Alexander. He's sat down with Benny Green at a piano. He's an eternal student, and so his music is going to come from the knowledge of being a classical piano student as a young child, and then studying the early jazz from when it started from Jelly Roll Morton. And I know this firsthand, that he's done this. So his voice is going to be a relevant voice in jazz simply based on his homework. And I know that there are 20-year-olds now that don't want to play a Gershwin tune. They don't want to play Cole Porter. You don't have to. But listen to it and know where your music's coming from and what other musicians did with this. You don't have to do that. I didn't want to play Dixieland. We all have our sights on what we want to do. I felt like it locked me in too much. I wanted to be on the Basie band. You want to talk about locking in a rhythm section? Just sit down with Freddie Green. That'll lock in the rhythm section. But I was poo-pooing Dixieland because I felt like it was too locked in and too restrictive. And then I had to laugh one night on the Basie band. I'm going, this is pretty locked in and I like it, So we're all young and stupid, and then we realize that, there are only two kinds of music. There's good music and there's bad music. So all the genres that we put on it, there's great Dixieland music. I can sit in front of a band and just be tapping my foot the whole night with peanut shells on the floor, and then they're swinging. So it's, there are only two kinds of music, like Duke Ellington did say. Creation of the music and where the artist goes is now a free-for-all. The artist, if they're producing their own music, there's no record label telling you what your next project has to be. So it's open season. You can play whatever you want. You can come up with compositions you want, and as long as it's online and available through something, people who want to hear that are going to hear it. I don't think we can rely on record companies to do the groundwork on PR. It helps, certainly, but I think the jazz business still is good with independent labels. I think we can count on that. I think by us being out as artists on independent labels, we're selling CDs all the time to an audience that hears it, and they have to find the CD, so they'll go online to find that CD after the concert. And I think that's a big part of our CD sales. Again, it's up to the listener. When I used to teach privately, one guy came in and I said, okay, who do you want to play with? Let's gear your education, and you get your own curriculum for you. Who do you want to play with? And let's back down from that to see how we get to that point. You're going to play with this person. And he said, well, I just downloaded something from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and that's who I want to play with. And I said, great. Do you know who the drummer is? He said, no. Because you downloaded it, right? Okay, so you're new to the Red Hot Chili Peppers and you don't know who the drummer is. It's Chad Smith. You know, I just did a festival with him a month ago. We were on the same festival. Now, if you got your thing together, I can go to him and say, this guy wants to study with you because he wants to be in your band. You know, but if you don't know who the drummer is, you know, there's no way that connection can be made. So don't be stupid. You know, don't just download a tune and say, I like this band, I want to be in it. That's not how it works. You know, so I think there are missing links of information that students have to get. They have to find out. That's why album notes, you know, liner notes on albums are so crucial. We could tell you when it was recorded, if Rudy Van Gelder was the engineer, the date, what happened on that date. Woody Herman band recorded in 1963 on the day John Kennedy was assassinated, and the tune that they recorded was After You've Gone. You know, that's vital stuff that, you know, that you grab off a record, and that means, and I remember it, that was 1963, and I remember that information about that recording. So we're not getting that, and we're not getting that information as jazz fans and jazz musicians, and I think we need to. So we've got to find out how to do more research, and even if we're just going to download who that, if I download something, I'll go to the website and I'll find out who's in the band, you know, and I'll document it in the iTunes, who the drummer is, who the arranger is, the date that it was recorded, because all that's important if you really want to know why that music sounds the way it does. I also think the record companies are responsible for not getting some talent out because there was a political reason or a rub with the record company owner and the artist. And so we're not going to put your next record out, and that could have been the greatest one they ever did. I think the cream rises to the top, and I think it's up to the consumer to find that the music is going to, that's going to do it for them, and they're going to find it. Diana Krall is well loved by so many fans. I would say 80% of the audience didn't care who was on bass or drums or guitar with her, but the 20% that did care still come up to me and say that DVD Live in Paris is my first exposure to you. And then I went on to find other things that you did. So, you know, the high profile record companies might help in that regard, where they're going to introduce you to as an artist to a whole audience that didn't know about you. But it's your job to keep those people buying your music, you know, by playing your butt off every night and putting out great quality music and not letting that listener down with your musical tastes, you know, and keep that audience where you've got them now keep the audience. So I think it works both ways with large companies, you know, large record companies. I think it's up to the consumer to find, you know, where the best restaurant is, what the best music is, and what their favorite drummer is, and I think we can't be lazy as a listener, and it's all right there for us, right before us now, more than it's ever been. It is a heavy saturation, but you know, there's a lot of lousy music out there too. So you just have to seek out what does it for you. I tend to look at it positively instead of, you know, I don't have this big machine behind me, and you know, but how many artists, I mean, Columbia cut Michael Brecker, they cut Joey DeFrancesco, you know, they didn't sell a certain number of CDs that the corporation that owned the record label wanted them to sell. So are we saying this artist is history now because they didn't sell your number that you wanted them to sell, so therefore you're cutting Herbie Hancock? You know, Herbie's still doing okay, you know. When he's nominated for Grammy after Grammy after Grammy, he didn't, you know, that record company didn't put him out of business. So, you know, I think we as artists find a way to just keep creating what we do, and there's going to be an audience for it.